that a lot of you have got some very strong views on that. We have, the government have announced 8 freeports in England, 11 overall. There are one each for each of the one each for the devolved nations, but we were expecting 7 for England, but in the end we got 8, and they are distributed around the country. There's one on the Tees. There are 2 to the south of us in Yorkshire, sort of one based around the Goole, Grimsby area, one on the Humber. They're not all on the coast. There's one that is East Midlands Airport, which is largely based around the DHL depot at East Midlands, but they are distributed. We're not sure whether the government will announce a second round of Freeports or not. I think they'll probably wait and see how the first 8 go. But we believe there were about 26 credible bids for Freeports around the country. So there's a lot of interest in having them. They're not a new thing. They operate around the world. I think there's about 93 countries operate Freeports on about 93 different models. So they are all things to all people as well. They're designed as a mechanism to make international trade easier. You can, as a manufacturer particularly, or as an international trader, you can bring your goods into a free port, and as long as they don't go outside of the free port, they don't cross the UK international boundary. So therefore, you don't do all the import paperwork, you don't pay tariffs on things that come in, and they decided to make it easier for those who are conducting international trade, bringing in a lot of, say, components, that kind of thing. You can bring them into a free port area, you can do what you do with them to make your final product and send them back out again much easier. In the model that our government have gone for, there is a mixture of tax incentives and customs incentives and procedures, and I'll come on to those in a little bit. But one thing that the government have done in terms of free ports is to look at them as a driver of levelling up, particularly that phrase that we've got at the moment, and as a driver of regeneration. So therefore, they don't want, and they've been very clear about this, what they don't want is a load of warehousing space on a free port space. They want industrial activity on there. They want good and new investment on the free ports. So they've announced that there has to be an element of innovation goes on the free ports as well, particularly in terms of R&D, and they've put some things in place around that to sort of make, I guess, any inward investors that come on to the free port a bit more sticky. If you've got an innovation site here, you're more likely to stick with it. They're generally themed around sectors. Any bid had to identify the sectors that they would look at, which is probably a way of offsetting a little bit of displacement. And they can also be split over multiple sites in an area, within an area of a 22.5 kilometre radius, so a circle around your central point of your free port. So they don't all have to be in one lump of a site. So they're split into 2 things: tax sites and custom sites. Tax sites are also custom sites, but custom sites aren't necessarily tax sites. Clear, but there we go. In each free port, you can have up to 3 tax sites, but those tax sites must not come to more than 600 hectares in total. I think the Tees one's about 560 hectares in total, and I'll come on to the Tees sites later. There are some benefits to being on the tax sites and some incentives, and those of you who've been familiar with enterprise zones, they're not massively dissimilar to that. So you get your national insurance contributions as an employer paid for 5 years, no business rates for 5 years, and there are things like R&D incentives and other incentives. And certainly with the announcement last week of General Electric moving on to the Tees Freeport, there's certainly been a large government grant for them to do that and bring them on there. So although that's not necessarily written into the Freeport bid, I guess there is some room for wiggling there. they're aimed at bringing new investment, as I said, but there is a risk of displacement, and I'll come on to that a bit later as well. And they're mostly based around large industrial or post-industrial sites. As I said before, the idea is regeneration. I think it's crucial to note at this point with the tax sites, the 5 years runs from the opening of the Freeport, not the opening of the business. So it looks like we'll open Freeports, the government have said, by the end of the year. That's when the clock starts ticking. So if it takes you 2 years to build and open your factory, you'll only get 3 years NIC paid for and business rates. So that's an important distinction, and probably one of the reasons why some of the harder to develop sites and some of the ones that need a lot of remediation haven't been included in the Freeport. Custom sites, I'm not going to say too much on this because I don't necessarily want to steal a lot of Charlie's thunder. But as I said before, the idea is that the goods don't cross an international boundary, so you don't have tariffs into the UK to pay. They do have stringent security measures around them. You have to have secure fencing, you have to have security, and you have to comply with border force, and you have to comply with customs compliance. And that, so you really have to know what you're doing to run a site and have the expertise in place. The setup and running costs all sit at the moment with the site operator, and that is quite a significant investment. I think in the Tease bid that they're looking at about 1.1 billion of investment from site operators for the customs site, and there is a criminal liability if things go wrong. If you get it wrong or somebody on your site gets it wrong, as the responsible party, there is potentially a criminal liability there. That's around because the government, one of the big fears over Freeports have been that they will be simply used to stash stolen Picassos and gold bullion and drugs and that sort of thing. So if you're doing that, you'll have to stick with the arrangements you've got. I'm afraid Freeports aren't going to apply to you. What it doesn't do, and I think this is really important around custom sites, what they don't do is they don't exempt you from country of origin rules as you're exporting things. They don't exempt you from export tariffs to, let's say, the European Union. I know there's not that many tariffs there, but to tariffs anywhere else. They don't exempt you from any of that paperwork. It's not a free-for-all that you have to do. You still will have to fill in your country of origin, and that's probably going to be very complicated if you're making use of the Freeport and bringing things in from all over the world. And they don't necessarily make transportation or export cheaper. They are there largely for maybe the benefit of people who are on there, but I know Malcolm's going to come on to all that. So that's just where we are. So the Tease Freeport, and I'm going to activate my pointer here, and I'm really sorry about this map. It's been really difficult to get a good map, and you'd have thought they might have coloured the tax sites and the custom sites in different colours, but here we are. So this is the Tees Valley area, and the centre of the Freeport is around here. So that's where our 22.5 kilometre radius sits on. The 3 tax sites that we have in the Tees Port are 2 here, which are the first 2 phases of the Tees Works site, the former SSI Steel site. This bit sort of is the bit around British Steel, and this is where the GE wind factory is going. And the second site is this bit, which is the Redcar bulk terminal and the bit around the port. The other tax site is the Wilton site, which a lot of you will be very, very, very familiar with. There's a lot of development anyway on Wilton, and a lot of developable land. It's already got development rights around Wilton, so it made a lot of sense to put it there. Similarly, they're bringing in an awful lot of bulk cargo into Wilton's, and with the export market, it made a huge amount of sense to be there. So therefore, the customs, the customs sites, there's one around Hartlepool here, which is sort of around the JDR Cables Herrimer site, another site in Hartlepool there, and this is Charlie's site here, which is the, I think Charlie, isn't it? The AV Dawson site, and there are a few sort of around LV Shipping and this sort of thing here. And we also have the airport site, which is a customs site, and this is the developable south side of the airport. So that's what the Freeport for the Tees looks like. They're all Freeports are based on sectors, and different sectors differ around the country. Our sectors on the Tees are based on green technology, which includes offshore wind, and there is now a very big incentive around offshore wind, but also things around carbon capture and storage, which plays into the Tees agenda on things like blue hydrogen, and some of the existing, certainly with Wilton, some of the existing emissions there will be sequestered. The CO2 is scrubbed out, sequestered under the North Sea, and through the carbon capture. Through net zero Teesside, sorry, mental block there, which is probably a whole different presentation for a whole other day, but certainly very much around net zero, the green agenda, the green economy is a big sector. And as we come up to COP26 in Glasgow, that's going to get even bigger on the government's agenda. Chemicals is obviously another one, particularly with the Wilton site, and advanced manufacture. There is an element of advanced manufacturing as well there, and you can probably crowbar most definitions of engineering and manufacturing into advanced manufacturing. The bid says it is looking to generate directly 41,780 jobs. That's quite a high job figure. They also give an indirect jobs of 133,000 jobs in the bid. Make your own mind up about whether that's maybe necessarily achievable or not. We'll see, but they've certainly made a good start on it. And there are a few things we don't know yet. There is a negotiation period now where TVCA is the lead body, and the Mayor will negotiate with the Treasury particularly, but other departments of government around what the final Freeport will look like, what it will do, what the sectors are, but also how much money the government is going to give us to develop the Freeport. There's already an awful lot has gone into the site, and we're not sure that whether there will be more money to develop it. They're certainly looking for a very large private sector contribution into the site. We've got an outline of a governance structure, which again is down to negotiation, and that will be ongoing, but we don't know what the final governance structure is. That's to be negotiated. And similarly, we don't know anything about transport infrastructure. The government have been very quiet on this one. If you've got a large Freeport with supply chain goods running up to it, and quite an increase in traffic because of the Freeport, it's very probable that the A66 as it stands is not going to take that, and is going to require upgrading. Similarly with some of the rail heads and the rail infrastructure into Freeport, it's been on the agenda for a long time. There has been some progress made, but actually it's got to be a lot better than it is. And we've not had anything from the Department of Transport or from BEIS or from Treasury on what that transport infrastructure around Freeports is going to look like. And there's no point having a Freeport if you can't get anything to it. And similarly, one of the things that the government were keen to assure everyone on at the start of this process was around displacement, and how displacement would be mitigated. The benefits of Freeport and the levelling up benefits don't really come if all you do is move jobs from one area of the country to another, to the Freeport. What you've actually got to do is generate new jobs, and they were very strong on displacement at the start, but that seems to me, and this is my opinion, but it seems to have been quite watered down, does the displacement argument, both in the Tees bid, but also in what seems to be coming out of government. And it's probably an issue that if I was sitting in maybe somewhere like South Durham or somewhere like Tyneside even, which bid for a Freeport and didn't get one, and I was trying to attract manufacturing inward investment there, I might be a bit worried about this, but we'll have to see. Again, this is something probably for the negotiation period. So timetables, they were announced in the budget on the 3rd of March. There's a negotiation period officially up to the end of July, but these things tend to slip. So we can probably say maybe the autumn for that. There's got to be confirmation of customs sites and operators, because at the moment it's an expression of interest rather than necessarily the final site. And there's got to be due diligence. Can operators do the job that they're saying that they can do? Construction will be beginning now and will step up over the summer because the government wants them in operation by the end of 2021. So that's a gallop around Freeports, and we'll leave questions to the end, but they're my contact details. So I'll stop sharing there and probably hand over to Charlie to carry on. I'll tag team to Charlie, shall I? From AV Dawson.
Great, thanks very much, Rachel. And thanks to the North East Automotive Alliance and the Chamber for inviting me, and good afternoon to everyone. It's nice to be here. So I think my presentation, I think I'm bookcased by a policy expert and a legal expert. So my presentation in the middle of that is really about, I guess, trying to give the business perspective on it and to give a real life example, if you like. So I'm going to talk about AV Dawson and our Port of Middlesbrough site and how we understand the situation to be for us and our customers, and hopefully there'll be some things from that you can maybe pick up and relate to. I will start also by saying that I'm not a Freeport expert at all, so like the rest of you, we've been trying to get our heads around the opportunity as well and look at how this impacts our business. So I'll share my slides. Okay. Okay, so I've got some sort of general bits I wanted to just suggest and discuss before I get into the bit about AV Dawson. And the first one is this point around can a Freeport transform Teesside? And personally, and within AV Dawson, we certainly think that it can kickstart that transformation. On the left, you can see a picture of the South Tees Development Corporation site, now known as Tees Works, and all the land around that area, 4,500 acres worth of land. On the right, you can see the picture Jebel Ali Freeport, which is one of the most famous freeports in the world, over in the UAE. So you look at the transformation that could take place on our site in Middlesbrough, and the whole thing could be pretty immense. So it certainly puts...
Sorry to interject. I just wanted to say that you've got your next slide is on view, so I don't know whether it's in presenter view or it's up to you. You can, of course, you can leave it.
All right, I see. Let me just, I don't know how to switch that off, to be honest.
No, it's absolutely fine.
Is it just the slide or is it the notes, Laura?
You can see, yeah, notes on the next slide, yeah.
Right, I'll just come out of that then. Can you see it like that?
Can, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
Is that all right like that?
That's fine, yeah, yeah.
Right, I'll just do it like that. Sorry, everyone. Thought we'd practice that earlier, but anyway. So yeah, I mean, clearly for everyone, this puts Teesside on the map, and I think as a marketing professional myself, which is the background I come from, I can certainly understand the kudos and the value of being classed as a Freeport for Teesside and also for our Port of Middlesbrough site if we end up being successful in being part of that. Our view is it will attract more jobs and more business to the region, and it's already demonstrating that with the recent announcements around GE. But also, we think this is a real opportunity to challenge some of the negative beliefs that are out there about the region, both internally within the region and externally. And I think for many people, they probably didn't know where Teesside was before the budget announcements and were mentioning it so many times. So we've talked a little bit about the land mass that is the Tees Works site and the potential of new businesses and mega manufacturers coming to that site. But I thought I'd just take a moment to talk about the river itself and whether the river could actually cope with the potential increase and uplift in demand that a Freeport could bring. It's worth mentioning, many people might not be aware that there are actually 28 separate ports and terminals on the River Tees. And that's everything from our terminal that you can see featured in the picture there, which is Port of Middlesbrough, which we rebranded to Port of Middlesbrough last year, right down to the mouth of the river where you've got Redcar Bulk Terminal, which is the deepest river on the east coast of the UK, or the deepest berths on the east coast, with 17-metre berths there. So they can take absolutely massive ships down there. And then a whole load of terminals along the river in between, including Tees Dock, which is the container terminal, that PD Ports run, as well as maintaining the whole river. And that's before I even mention all the capabilities on the river for managing what they call liquid bulks, so crude oils, etc. So massive capability on the river to deal with a huge diverse range of cargoes, and also the capacity on the river as well. It wasn't that long ago that the river was receiving about 40 million tonnes worth of cargo. It's now dropped more recently to 28 million tonnes, but you can see straight away we've got that capacity for potential uplift in volumes. So moving on to AV Dawson and our Port of Middlesbrough site. As Rachel mentioned, we've been identified as a potential customs zone in the bid. The red line depicts the footprint of what we've put forward as that Freeport customs zone. This doesn't actually include the full 100-acre site that AV Dawson owns down on this area of the river. If you can see my mouse, hopefully, this area here includes Bowes Road Business Park, which is a property portfolio that we've got, if you like, and that's excluded from that footprint. And the reason we've chosen to exclude that is based around the potential security arrangements that we're going to have to increase, as Rachel was referring to earlier, with fencing, etc. So we felt we'd be able to control the additional security requirements much more easily if a general business park was excluded out of that footprint. But you can see all of our port area is included in it. Our rail terminals, which are all down around this area as well, although rail does carry on to the port, and our automotive facilities, including this big shed here, which is our main automotive shed, our main automotive warehousing. So I thought it would be helpful. I know many of you will be aware of all of the import and export duties, etc. All the import duties and various requirements around import and export. However, I think there'll be possibly some people in the room that maybe are less familiar with this. So I thought I'd just take a moment to explain that side of things. So when you're importing cargo into the UK, there are various duties that are applicable, customs duties that are applicable. And I've broken those down into three broad areas. The first one of those is some quotas that actually are applicable to the steel industry at the minute. And these are left over from when Trump put his steel safeguarding duties in place for the United States between the US and the EU. And these have been maintained now between the EU and the UK, which is a bit of a curveball that I think a lot of the steel industry was not expecting. Now, steel represents about 40% of our customer base, so it's quite a significant concern for us. And we've got quite a few of our customers in that sector that are quite concerned about how they move forward and manage that. So those steel quotas are in place and are about managing the volumes coming in and out of the UK. And potentially, if you fall in excess of those volumes, you can be facing a charge or a tax of 25% of the value of that. So for a ship coming in, that could typically be about £250,000 that they could be facing. Import tariffs is the next thing. You've probably heard of customs tariffs. So those are dependent on the different types of cargo, and those are applicable on products being imported. As Rachel mentioned, we've maintained our agreement with the EU. So technically, there's no tariffs. However, depending on the origin of those products, so if it's something that's come from Japan originally before coming to Germany, then there could still be tariffs to pay. And those vary massively depending on the product. And then import VAT, which is applicable on most cargoes coming in and is typically around 20%. So when you've got a free port, as is that green area that's depicted on the right-hand illustration there, you've kind of got a free zone before those duties are all applicable. So for ease to get it straight in my head, I've summarised this into 3 areas of what are the benefits specifically associated with a customs zone. The first one's around goods processing. So you can bring your goods into that zone, you can process them, assemble them, manufacture them, and re-export them, and you won't pay any duties and tariffs. The second one is around consolidating cargo. You can bring things in, not do anything to change it, just consolidate it there on a temporary basis and then re-export it, and you won't pay any duties and tariffs. So for us, we see this as a key area for a few of our customers. We've got a customer that consolidates cargo on our site, machinery, various equipment and materials from all over the place. And then they've recently been putting it onto a ship and sending it over to the Antarctic for various projects out there. So they'd be able to consolidate all of that onto our site and re-export it without any duties being applicable. And then the last area is holding or storing imported goods on a free port before distributing into the UK. By doing this, you can delay paying those duties and tariffs, so what they call duty deferment, which there can be some benefits with improved cash flow. So potentially, could you get the cash from your customer before you've had to pay those tariffs, which is then going to assist with that. So the other thing I just wanted to mention, I forgot to mention further on at the top, I had a bit of a health warning on this slide as well, just to say, please don't take this as tax advice, business advice, or legal advice. You've got a lawyer coming up next, so please refer to him for any of those kind of questions. But this, as I say, this is our interpretation of all of this. I've also got a health warning on this slide, and that is to say that as Rachel flagged up earlier, we've all got to go through a process to be approved by HMRC. We already have HMRC and Border Force coming to our site and doing various audits on our site. So we're not too concerned about achieving the security requirements, but you never know what's going to be involved and the cost implications of putting those things in place. So it is possible that any of the 11 sites that have been identified may fail that audit, or may choose to withdraw because the cost of complying with that becomes quite onerous. So we're putting that position forward on our health warning on this side of things. The general benefits, though, that we see for us, we think this is a great opportunity for enhancing our rebrand, our move to be known as Port of Middlesbrough, which we put in place to help people better understand what we do and better understand where we're located. And this will enable us to compete more internationally, to better compete internationally. It'll support our existing customers, or some of our existing customers. For some, it's quite irrelevant, but so the example I gave you earlier, the Antarctic, and also we've got a number of I should have mentioned earlier around consolidating cargo. For example, around the offshore wind sector, we've got a major customer that consolidates cable for offshore wind farms on our site. So they can bring that cable into our site, not pay your import VAT, and put it back on a ship once they've got everything consolidated, put it back on a ship and take it over to a site to build a wind farm or to repair a wind farm. So there's examples where it's supporting our existing customers. Opportunities with customs links between Teesside Freeports. So we're looking at who might be a manufacturer on that site and whether we can provide additional logistics support to them and maintain that customs status by using various customs documentation. So a T1 document that enables something to transport between 2 sites and then potentially be exported out of our site if the sites and the quays down at the Tees Works site are over congested with activity, or indeed if they need more specialist support in a particular area. So we specialise in heavy, awkward cargoes, a lot of steel specialism, so that may still come through our site. Also opportunities with customs links with other ports and through the Channel Tunnel, through rail as well. So we've got a quite extensive rail infrastructure on our site. There's a big focus from the government at the moment to try and move transport over to rail from the roads. And so there may be opportunities to maintain those links and that customs status from through the Channel Tunnel up to our site. And in fact, with some of the changes to the automotive supply chains at the moment, we're now about to be receiving some cargo by rail through the Channel Tunnel. We also receive Korean steel into the Port of Liverpool at the moment. and that's for the automotive sector too. So potentially that could come into Liverpool, be transported over to our site, maintain customs status, and sit in the warehouse that you can see pictured on the screen there. And then if Port of Tyne had also been a Freeport zone, it could have technically gone up to Port of Tyne's Freeport area, been manufactured into a vehicle and exported back out. And then wherever they exported that to, they pay duty just on the finished product, which is what people have referred to as tariff inversion, because you're not paying on those components coming in, but paying on the finished product going out. There may also be more opportunities for us with other countries that aren't actually in EU membership, but are in the local area, like Norway, Iceland, and Switzerland. Though there are some agreements in place with those countries already, but we are seeing increased activity with kind of Baltic areas at the moment. So we're keeping a close eye on that. And then we also have a ships agency within our AV Dawson group called Cockfield Knight, which is an in-house agency based on our site here in Middlesbrough. And we're expecting an upturn in inquiries that come through to that organisation, that business as well. And then the last slide, really just to talk about some specific benefits. I mentioned there the specific benefits on some key projects that we're looking at the moment. So there's one project that will bring potentially about just over £500 million into the UK. We're competing against various other sites in Europe for that. And we're anticipating that this will help us with that side of things. The offshore wind mobilisation and the opportunity to not pay import VAT, which I mentioned earlier. And then this one particular key customer for us in the offshore sector is looking at now appointing us as their Northern European marine base, which means that work that was potentially going to be happening in Europe to consolidate various cargoes for offshore wind projects is now happening on the Tees, including a £210 million project that they've won for the Dogger Bank Sophia wind farm, which will see the Tees and Port of Middlesbrough receiving all of the vessel calls for that project. So that will be over 100 vessels that will come into the Tees as a result of that, which will be really, really good for the river, because you pay a tax when you bring a ship up the river, but also really good for our business as well. And we're also anticipating a number of other major deals, multi-million-pound opportunities in both offshore and automotive sectors as a result of us being able to position our business better with this kind of extra incentive. We've identified that we're expecting 18 new jobs as a result of the potential uplift of activity over the next 5 years, which is about a 10% increase in our workforce. And also this should hopefully give us a potential green light for another £5 million investment on building a 5th berth on our quay side. We have 4 berths currently, which stretch over about 1 kilometre, and this could mean that we need more berth capability to accommodate more and larger and longer vessels. So we're looking at a £5 million investment over the next 3 years to be able to accommodate that. And that's additional to the £10 million investment that we've talked about and announced earlier this year, end of last year, I think it was, sorry, for various infrastructure projects that are taking place on the site. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an overview of some of the considerations that we've been going through and some specific examples of areas that we can see of benefit for ourselves to position ourselves better for future growth for our business, which will result in our business growing, which will result in us needing more support from our supply chains, but also how we see that affecting some of our key customers as well. So I'll wait for any questions that come in the chat, and otherwise pass you on for the legal bit.
Thanks, Charlie.
Right, hopefully you can see the slides.
Excellent, thanks.
Brilliant. Okay. I want to pick up on a couple of the points that Rachel and Charlie have made. And the key thing, I think, is to look at the distinction between the free zone overall and then the component parts of the site. One of the reasons I want to emphasize this is that press coverage that followed the announcement in the budget of successful bids for Freeport status included coverage that was simultaneously over-optimistic and over-pessimistic. There was an awful lot of coverage that essentially suggested that Freeports were 45-kilometer areas that operated on a sort of Pirates of the Caribbean basis. That is not true. There were other elements of coverage that essentially said that Freeports would really bring at best marginal benefits. And again, that's really not true. So get into the detail. And if we're looking at the free zone, that is the large area of up to 45 kilometers in diameter. Within that site, or that zone, as you saw on the map that Rachel displayed, there are particular areas, particular sites that are designated for specific purposes. And the key distinction is between tax sites on the one hand and customs sites on the other. Now, the tax sites are really set up to behave in a sort of enterprise zone manner. They're the focal point for the benefits and incentives and tax breaks that are intended to promote regeneration and to attract inward investment. So tax sites are essentially areas that are ripe for improvement and for development. Custom sites are very tightly controlled, very regulated areas within the overall zone, within which the customs benefits are available to businesses that operate within those secured sites, essentially by virtue of their being located within a customs site. It's an area that essentially operates as a fenced-in, trusted trader regime. Some sites will be both a tax site and a customs site, and that essentially requires a sort of a dual authorization. And it means again that there is significant supervision and accountability on the part of the operators of those sites. And accountability in relation to the tax sites goes directly through to the Communities and Local Government Department, and from there to the Public Accounts Committee. So this is absolutely all about making sure that investment is targeted, properly stewarded, and is available within strictly supervised parameters. So on this simplified diagram, you can see that the overall zone includes some areas that are tax sites, some areas that are custom sites, but significant areas that have neither status. And that was one of the, if like, sort of over-pessimistic elements of the initial press coverage. We look at the particular benefits tax sites bring, the elements that Rachel mentioned, the business rates relief, enhanced capital allowances, streamlined planning procedures through permitted development. Custom sites have an entirely different target. They make available to businesses simplified procedures, the deferral of customs duties and import VAT that Charlie has mentioned, and that wondrous beast, tariff inversion, which is where for some industries and some processing activities, the final duty that's payable on the assembled, manufactured or processed good is less than the separate tariffs that would be payable on the materials or components. Now, I emphasize some industries and some processes, because tariff inversion has to be specifically analysed in the context of the UK's new duty regime. It has to be specifically analysed in relation to the UK-EU trade agreement to work out whether there is a sufficient difference between the intermediate goods, the components, and the finished goods to make tariff inversion available and worth having. So what does that tell us? It tells us that tax sites and customs sites are not areas that are intended for general business. They're intended to reflect the specific economic activities and the specific uses that are conducted within those sites. It's about targeted benefit. Businesses located or operating outside a tax site or a customs site don't directly benefit from this Freeport status. And I've underlined directly because that is an aspect of the Freeport agenda that explains the specific design that's been applied to UK Freeports. They are fundamentally about attracting inward investment and creating new jobs. And that's really why Rachel was emphasizing the innovation criterion that was at the heart of the selection process. So the agenda, the policy that lies behind this, is that attracting appropriate businesses into tax site and custom sites would have knock-on and sort of consequential benefits for the wider region. So that engine of growth function is critical to the selection and to the operation of those specific sites, customs and tax. Businesses located on a tax site that is just authorized as a tax site don't benefit from the customs offer. Businesses located on a customs site that is not also authorized as a tax site don't have automatic entitlement to those customs benefits. So again, precise calibration and analysis is key. And it's also worth emphasizing that the tax site benefits, the inward investment, tax breaks and reliefs are time limited. So this is all about kickstarting the sort of regeneration and inward investment that would become sticky because of the availability of ongoing customs reliefs through those sites. So if you're not on a custom site or a tax site, it doesn't mean that you won't benefit at all. What do I mean by that? Well, first of all, I've used the ancient Celtic spelling of Britain, by the way. First of all, if you are outside a customs site, your business can nonetheless replicate key elements of that customs offer by using established and existing procedures. So, for example, things like AEO, Authorized Economic Operator status, inward processing or outward processing reliefs are available and can replicate some of that custom site benefit. In other words, of being treated as being offshore during the processing, manufacturing or assembly phase. So what's the difference? Well, the difference is that if you're operating within a custom site, then those benefits are essentially a function of your location, a function of being within the custom site. You have administrative streamlining, you have cost savings that come from that location, but they also come from the decision of businesses within custom sites to operate under close supervision by the custom site operator. Businesses outside the custom site would need to make their own separate applications for AEO status or for authorization to use inward processing, outward processing, or other simplified procedures. So the choice of location is key. The businesses' individual ability to qualify and maintain qualification for special procedures is key. And it's the balance between those that is really the key relationship within the broader free zone and between the free zone and businesses elsewhere. What this is really driving us towards is the need for accurate and ongoing supply chain and data mapping. If you're moving goods between custom sites or between custom sites and tax sites and then back out, the benefits that flow from free port status depend on accurate tracking of the movement of those goods. It also depends on accurate tracking of the activities that go on within a particular site to make sure that, for example, things that are not intended, like stashing a whole bunch of Picassos, so that they are really just there for kind of collateral on money laundering deals, doesn't happen. This is about incentivizing, encouraging, and checking that what's happening is actual productive economic activity. It's worth analyzing whether you're within a custom site or outside, the available reliefs and procedures and steps that can be taken to replicate those benefits. And then the really important thing is looking at the interface between custom sites and businesses operating outside those sites that are essentially looking to boost their import or export performance. And one of the concepts that is being discussed, and one of the things that HM Revenue and Customs is very keen on, particularly their innovation team, is a move towards something that looks a lot like a virtual free zone. That is where supply chains are connected by technology using blockchain or distributed ledger that allows accurate tracking of goods and components through a supply chain, so that the custom site operating on T-side, for example, can have a tracked and verifiable relationship with a manufacturing facility in another part of the country, but act as a crucial link in maintaining these benefits. Freeports are part of a broader toolkit for the Global Britain agenda. If you're inside a free port and inside a tax site or a customs site, then there are huge benefits in terms of streamlined administration and cost savings. If you're outside a tax zone, a tax site or a customs site, then there are benefits to be obtained by integrating systems with those sites. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Malcolm, and thank you also to Rachel and to Charlie. I think that shows the depth of experience we've got in the membership and the associates that we deal with. So thank you for that. I'd also like to put a shout out to Rohan Kohli, who does a lot of great work in the trade and industry groups, and me and Laura, Rohan's not here today, so me and Laura are just trying to carry on his good work, so to speak. So thanks to Rohan as well. We're going to move to some questions. Now, there's been no questions coming up on the chat box, but we did have a couple of pre-prepared questions. So I'll just give this to the whole panel, and if you want to have a go at answering it, then just unmute yourselves. So the first question is, do you think companies in, for example, Tyneside will start relocating to Teesside now to benefit from this Freeport? And that's to the panel.
Well, if I could sort of jump in on that, I think that that really connects with the key points I was trying to make in terms of the distinction between custom sites and tax sites, and the real benefits of the custom sites, for example, are particularly calibrated to businesses that would benefit from the things that Charlie mentioned in terms of the deferrals or the tax tariff inversion process. Now, it's quite an undertaking to lift and move into a customs site, particularly because their fundamental point is to attract new business into the area. And given that it's possible with integration to essentially replicate many of those benefits on the customs side, the incentive for moving is actually pretty minimal. By moving in to a customs site, for example, you wouldn't necessarily obtain what might be pretty marginal benefits on that side in terms of business rates relief. Because remember, in the budget, as well as the Freeports, there were separate announcements in terms of business rates relief. So it's a sort of holistic economic calculation as to whether there's a point in moving in. For established businesses, it's likely to be marginal. And the point is about supporting them, not displacing them.
Excellent. Thank you, Malcolm. And there's a little link to that. Charlie, I don't know if you want to ask that question that you put through on the chat to me. You were talking about, do any of the members have warehousing sites? I don't know if you just want to share that, because I think it's sort of linked to that discussion.
Yeah, well, I was speaking to a lady actually the other day, and she was saying that there's a potentially a bigger win with this Freeport for those that are sitting outside it around potentially making their sites customs warehouses, so that if they're exporting or importing and exporting, they can bring it through the Freeport, bring it to their site, do whatever they're going to do at that site and re-export it and maintain that customs status. Now, obviously, that's not a straightforward thing to do. In fact, we've got a couple of warehouses on our site that already have that customs status, and that's been quite a painful exercise to get that and also to maintain that. But I wonder if that's because we're a third-party warehouse, we don't own the goods, and up until now we've not needed to really utilize it very much. So customs tend to try and take something away from you if you don't tend to maximize the use of it. But it just occurred to me, and I've not looked into it in enough detail to really get my head around that, to be able to say to everyone, crikey, this is what everyone should be doing. But it just occurred to me that could be really powerful for the whole wider North region.
That's my dog. Somebody just knocked at the door, so apologies for that.
So yeah, I was just interested to understand if any of the people on the call have already got customs warehousing status in place on their facility, and whether that's something that others are thinking, well, we should maybe be looking into doing.
I think that's something we can take forward after this event. I think maybe gather some intelligence with the membership. So I think that's a great point, and I love a win-win. So that's something that we need to explore. The only other question that we had, but the pre-prepared question that was to understand and keep up to date with the latest developments for the Freeport. Who should we contact? Who should somebody contact? What's the first port of call? If you pardon the pun, the first port of call.
I take that one. I think it depends what you're looking for. If it's just to sort of utilize one of the customs areas on the Freeport, then that is you contact the individual operators. But again, I stress we won't know who they finally are until the autumn. But I'm sure you'd put it in chat. If it's a general inquiry, then it's Tees Valley Combined Authority who are leading the bidding process for it, and the general overall investment process. So I would say they're probably the first port of call. But again, I stress we won't know many of the final details until autumn. So it's probably better, by all means, open a dialogue now. But they won't be able to give you definitive answers on things and until then.
Okay, great. And so from our point of view, as an organisation that tries to funnel information through, I think if we get any inquiries, we'll treat them on a case by case basis and pass them on as accordingly.
Or by all means, speak to Rohan if you're not.
Yeah. Rohan, yeah, he's the trading industry person for the NEA. Yeah. So that's a good show. So are there any other questions from anybody? I mean, I'm going to give you the opportunity to be brave and unmute yourself if you want to ask a question to everybody. If not, then I will just thank everyone. I'll just ask once more. Any other questions? Okay, right. So I'd like to thank Rachel, Charlie, Malcolm. Really appreciate you giving up your time. Laura for putting it together. Rohan for doing all that great work in the background, and everybody else for attending. So thank you very much. This has been recorded, so you will have access to the information. And I think that's it. 14:30 on the dot. Okay.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks.
Well done, Stuart.
Thanks very much. Take care.
Cheers, everyone. Bye.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Much appreciated. Okay, good stuff. Right.
Are you off to do your stuff then, Laura?
Yeah, if you can, your computer might now do a recording.
So I'm stopping the recording now, yeah.